In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to become a top real estate agent. And I promise you, it's something different than what you think about. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the psychology of becoming a top real estate agent. We're going to be talking about relationships that you're going to need to become a top real estate agent. We're going to talk about speed, the importance of removing friction and being able to move faster. Talk about different challenges that real estate agents have and how to overcome that. To help us with that, we have Chris King. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
I love it. I love it. So let's just jump right into it. Like, if I asked you, how can somebody become more productive as a real estate agent, what would you say?
Well, I'd say the first thing is to become hyper aware to how you're relating to everything, to the situation, and particularly to yourself. Until there is awareness about something, there's really no choice in how you're going to react or respond to it. So first thing, hyper awareness.
Got it. What would you say? Because in our industry, the average agent sells maybe 3 to 4 properties, maybe a certain percentage, 40, 50% of them don't sell a single deal. Why do so many agents fail as a real estate agent?
Well, I can say from what we've seen, there's a confidence thing there. It's how you show up. I tell you what, the number one influencer to the outcome of any engagement, whether it's a meeting or a sale or anything that you're going into, is the energy you bring into it. Everything in this world is energy, right? And it all operates in frequencies. And so when you go in there, coming from the frequency of the person who has already achieved the thing that you are trying to achieve, that is going to dramatically increase your ability to make that happen.
Got it. And then if somebody is not receiving the results that they want and they want to improve their energy, like how do they go about doing that?
Well, that's going to vary person to person. So this gets real personal real quick, because the answer to that is going to be dependent on how that person is responding or relating to the not getting what they want. So if, for example, if they're going into some kind of spin on negative self-talk and how terrible they are and they suck or whatever like that, well, obviously this is going to be what I'll call a relational problem to themselves. And so that's going to have to be adjusted. The way that reality unfolds is a system, and there are sort of what I'll call stopping points along the road, and each one needs to be aligned with the outcome that you're looking for. And so depending on where that person is and what stopping point and which way that's going is going to affect the direction in terms of success or failure.
Got it. Okay. What type of psychology would somebody need to become a top producing agent?
Well, I'd say, start with Maslow, right? We go with, Abraham Maslow, positive psychology, that kind of thing. It also is going to involve having a growth mindset. A lot of people, there's the fixed mindset or the growth mindset. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, and she works with, Andrew Huberman up at Stanford. And she's kind of the foremost expert in this, but a growth mindset shows how that failure is the opportunity to begin again more intelligently, right? Quote Henry Ford here. It's about that challenges make us better, right? Difficulty to our brain and challenges, it's sort of like working out to the body, right? It makes us smarter, it makes us more creative. So you need to relate to this through the lens of a growth mindset. If you relate to it through the lens of a fixed mindset, and it's like, well, failure is the limit of my abilities, and I either have talent or I don't have talent, which means I can or I cannot do something. The reason that this impacts everything is because it has an effect on somebody's neurochemistry, and it has effect on their feeling state. In basic neuroscience, feelings drive actions, actions produce results.
Got it. So you've been hired by different companies recently to basically help their agents. What are some of the different challenges that these companies are hiring you for? And what are some of the different things that you're noticing between the agents? And then how are you able to help solve some of these things? And it doesn't even have to be like in real estate. It could also be in other industries as well, too.
Yeah. I would say that when we look at what's been happening in terms of the market and things getting kind of tight, and it's been really hard out there. So what we've seen in some of these agents is a what I call a contracted way of showing up. Okay, so they get really tight, they get like kind of clamping down their willingness to collaborate with other people if they're on a team. Goes way down, and they get very isolated. And the problem with this is a couple of things. Number one, it's going to start locking you out of creative solutions because your brain is in contract mode, and so this is scarcity, this is survival thinking. The problem is if you're trying to grow your business and succeed, you need thrive, expansion, abundant thinking, right? These are diametrically opposed philosophies and even energies, right? You can't grow from contraction any more than you can lose weight by eating cake. It's just not going to work, right? So you need it, and what I say in this work is, regardless of industry, it's not a good, bad, right, wrong thing. It's aligned or misaligned, right? And so if you're in a contracted scarcity mindset and you're trying to grow, well, that's obviously misaligned. And we're seeing a lot of this in some of these teams where they get contracted, and this locks down their ability to come up with creative solutions and work together and blah, blah, blah. It's like all the things.
If you notice this about an individual or somebody on your team that is sort of contracting, or they're beginning to get like in that scarcity mindset, how can somebody like me as a team leader help them?
Listening to their speech patterns is important, and this may require some level of training. If like some of the phrases that you're going to listen for, I can't, I don't know, and anything that sounds like it's shutting down, that's going to be a good indicator of what's going on in somebody's framework. And this has, again, it has an effect on somebody's neurochemistry, which physiologically affects the way their brain is working. And so there are subtle changes that somebody can make. Like if you take the I don't know statement about anything and you flip it to an I wonder how, like, well, I don't know how to do that. I wonder how I can do that. This produces a physiological change in the brain, right? It changes what's happening in terms of the neurotransmitters. It changes how your brain is functioning. And this starts to open up the creative centers and move you into a more aligned direction with success.
Got it. It's funny because I help certain agents on my team sometimes, and one of them was like, the market is changing. How am I going to survive? And when I heard the word survive, I'm just like, my God, like this guy's going like into like contracting mode. So how does somebody, like, let's say that you are noticing certain changes in the marketplace, you are noticing that the volume is changing. How does somebody stay in expansion mode while still being like, recognizing the external market forces and still like eliminating some of the fat? Because we've been through certain changes and I'm like, hey, I'm really not using this, I'm not using that, but let me reallocate these $5,000 that I was using to that instead of here, instead of using that. And then you could still be in growth mode. But how does somebody keep that going?
I would say, number one, look at some of the masters and look at some of history. Fortunes are made in down economies because somebody got creative, somebody got mobilized. It's a question of leverage, right? We talk about efficiency or productivity, and that really bores me at this stage of the game. I'm much more interested in, like, any idiot can teach you time management, right? I'm much more interested in leverage, input to output ratio. How do I get a whole lot more using a whole lot less? And what are my resources? What are all the things I do have? And what can I do with them? Something that Gene Kranz was a flight director at NASA, and I had the good fortune of meeting him many, many years ago. And he was the flight director for the Apollo missions, the Gemini missions, including Apollo 13. And there was a movie many, many years ago now, but there was a great line that Gene had said where everybody's bringing him all these problems. This is wrong and that's wrong and this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And he says, okay, hold on. What do we got on the spacecraft that's good? And it was a pivotal moment. Like, okay, what do we have right now that works? What is working for us? This completely reorients, again, how the brain is functioning, And like I said, fortunes are made in down economies. So it's never a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness. So how do we tap into our own natural resourcefulness and crush it while everybody else is panicking?
I love it. I love it. Um, so when people are going into the scarcity mindset, or when people, or how does somebody like, so what are the things that agents should be doing right now to expand? Like, what are some of the things that they should be doing?
Well, I'm not much for strategy because the agents know how to do what the agents know how to do. So my job is to give them tools and ways to look at it differently so that it changes the patterns and the templates and the automation. So I'll give you one of my favorite tools. One of my favorite tools I simply call Banana World.
Okay.
Banana World is a world of the fantastic, the ridiculous, and the absurd where there really are no rules. And the way the game is played is you have a end result statement that you're looking for, whatever that is. And the question is, what is one thing you could do that if you did it would produce that result? Now, again, I'm not looking for viable solutions. I'm not looking for actual things that you might do. I'm looking for something ridiculous. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was working with a client that was feeling very trapped in her professional life and her personal life, stuck in the house and the kids and the husband, and like nothing was really going well for her at this point. I said, okay, let's go to Banana World. What is one thing you could do that you would never actually do, but if you did it, you would no longer be trapped in this situation? And she said, I could fake my death and move to Costa Rica. Yes. True story. If you faked your death and moved to Costa Rica, you would no longer be in that situation. True story. What else? What happens is, and she just kept coming up with ridiculous things. Now, I noticed that as I said that, you smiled. It had a physiological effect on your brain. What
Yeah.
this does is it again changes the way the brain is working. The longer you spend in Banana World, and the more ridiculous that it is, you start to have a little bit of fun. You're starting to get dopamine hits. This feels good. This is what's making us laugh, and we're enjoying this. And the longer you do this, these viable elements start to sneak in to the absurd solutions. And your brain is in creative problem solving mode instead of contracted, I can't mode. And this is how you physiologically leverage your system to solve your problems for you.
Got it. I love the idea of Banana World, and you can do that with anybody. You could even do that with your kids. What other tools would you say, or examples of how you've been able to help people, would you say?
Well, I think there's any number of tools. Banana World is certainly one of my favorites. I like the yes and kind of thing. If I have a group of agents sitting around a table, I will make a absurd statement, and something like, "There's a giant purple dinosaur outside on Manistee Avenue," or something, and the next person says yes and then builds on that story, and then the next person yes and builds on the story, yes and. We go around the table. And it's hilarious, by the way, because people are funny. They come up with all kinds of wild stuff. But again, this is getting their brain to work in a place of creativity, to work in a place of adding to and collaborating with one another. Like the team starts to gel really well as they go around the table. And it's a lot of fun. And this is why we say, peak performance in particular in any industry, it's really a function of getting your psychology, your physiology, and your energy all working for you instead of against you.
I love that. It's crazy because not only that, but I would imagine it'd be like a good culture building to do that, because now I'm sure like during lunch break, they're like, oh, like, did you hear what Steve said? He said that the dinosaur did this or the dinosaur did that.
Right.
And it also, like, I would imagine brings people together. If you wouldn't mind, I actually am enjoying like the Banana World. I'm enjoying like the dinosaur example as well too. Would you mind going over like different type of examples and focusing some of our time on that? Because I think that would be like really helpful for viewers.
When you say different types of examples, what examples of what?
Not examples, just of different exercises that you've done with people and why you do those examples and how those examples help. Because I think that if like even that example of Banana World, that's something that I can go home to and do with my wife. I can go home, or I can do the there's a dinosaur and do that with my team. What are some of the different things that I could do with loved ones, individuals, or different people to help them get into that more creative type of mindset, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to couples, partners, relationships in general, there's a couple of things. Number one, questions are really good. A lot of times, I'm going to use binary gender just for ease of conversation and it's statistically accurate through our organization. But men tend to be the fixers, right? In
Yeah.
somebody, woman comes in and brings a problem or whatever, and a man immediately starts going into problem solving mode and fix it, fix it, fix it. And that's not necessarily. It's kind of disempowering in a way. And so a lot of times, what I say is answer every question with a question. Anytime somebody says, well, what do you think? This is great, by the way, for kids. If you have kids, it's like south of 25 years old, they're not even really humans yet. They're basically just talking lizards. Okay. Cause their brains are not fully developed until about 25. So when you're like, why won't my kid do what I tell him to do? It's because the kid hasn't figured this out for themselves. We're trying to upload really new software onto really old hardware kind of thing. It's like, it doesn't work. So answer every question with a question, or getting them to solve the problem, right? Because if we provide solutions, if we ask these questions, and I'll tell you my favorite question: what if you're wrong? And I'll tell you why this is so important. Humans unconsciously and actively seek to validate the reality of their understanding. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole just for a second here, if you'll
Yeah.
indulge me. But everybody has an operating system in their head. Okay. Just
Mhm.
like a phone or a computer, so does a human. That we call it a belief system. That system's been running since that individual was about 6 years old. And that individual is the sole architect of that system. Now, the system generates every thought that somebody has. Every time we have a thought, we experience it as a feeling. Feelings then drive actions. Actions produce results. And the results are unconsciously designed to validate the system. So it's a feedback loop going around and around. So when we say something like, I can't do this and I can't do that, even if you've proven that that's the case 1,000 times, I will say, what if you're wrong? What if you're just producing the reality of your understanding, because this is what humans do? And we can prove this. There's something called the Bannister principle. We've proven that this idea that seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. The second you believe it to be different, you can probably prove that it is different, but you got to be willing to be wrong.
That's crazy. That's good as well too. Trying to think of like a situation where to like ask that, meaning that like it's like just any thought basically. It's like, hey, what if?
Anytime somebody comes up with a definite solution, like it is this way or it has to be this way, what if you're wrong? I mean, if I just take this kind of to a low level and maybe extreme sort of thing, is like if there's a single woman that's looking for romantic partnership in a man, and she's wandering around going, there are no good single men out there, she's going to prove that, right? You're never going to see a unicorn if you don't believe in them, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
if you and this is where I come back to aligned or misaligned. If you want romantic partnership, is buying into your belief that that person doesn't exist, is that aligned or misaligned with the outcome? Well, clearly
Yeah.
it's misaligned. So you have a choice here. um Everything you believe is a choice, right? Beliefs are choices that we haven't taken responsibility for, and once we take responsibility for them, we can choose whichever one we want. And if we're going to be a good steward of our goals, of our mission, of whatever we want to achieve in business or life, it's our responsibility to make the choices, the beliefs that align with that.
Got it. So would you say that in order to become a top producing agent, you have to believe that you're going to be a top producing agent?
Yes. You got to believe you can. And I tell you what, you can take it a step further. Believe you already are. Like feel it in your body. When I was younger, the phrase that we heard was dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Right? Because it changes how you feel. It sort of changes how you show up in the world. It changes, at the risk of sounding a little woo here, it changes your frequency. When you put yourself in the energy field, in the belief, in the feeling state of the person who has what you want or who has done what you want to achieve, your chances of making it happen go up dramatically.
What are some daily exercise that somebody can do with themselves to keep themselves at peak performance?
Yeah, visualization is crucial. That's meditation, visualization. If I like, that's just a requirement. To work with our organization, you're going to meditate, or we're not going to work with you. And meditation is actually super easy. Somebody out there right now is going, I suck at meditation. You can't be bad at it. You can do it or not do it. There's no good or bad at it. And because meditation is not about quieting your mind. That's not what meditation is. It's about noticing the noise, right? The human brain is not a quiet place. It's just inherently noisy. So it's about noticing that noise. And this is basically training in awareness. One poetic way that I heard it phrased, somebody said that prayer is talking to God. Meditation is listening. I thought that was really cool.
That's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that and the visualization, when you visualize having what you want, being in that successful place, you see that in your mind's eye, you sit in that field, your chances of making it happen go up. And we've actually proven, just through the lens of subatomic physics, you can build muscle and lose weight by thinking about it. The brain is that powerful.
Got it. If someone wanted to I'm imagining that, like, because I've tried meditation, I'm okay at it. I just haven't been able, like, I don't know what I'm looking for in the meditation. Like, so I've actually struggled quite a bit with meditation. What advice would you give?
Meditation is the analogy I'll draw is it's sort of like sitting on the side of a river or a lake or something, and you're staring across to the other side, not really looking at anything, just a lazy gaze. And in your peripheral vision, you start seeing these boats. They come into your peripheral vision across your field of view and then out the other side. And you don't track with it or anything. You just notice it come in. There's 2 or 3 at a time, different sizes, shapes, colors, whatever. You notice these boats. You never get on the boat. You notice them. Well, this is essentially what meditation is. Every one of those boats is a thought. And they're going to be wacky thoughts, things from high school or work or whatever. Invariably, I will tell you that you will get on the boat. I might be sitting in meditation and think about whatever, my cell phone, my cat or something. And then I think, oh, okay, I need to call that client back. Oh, and then I got to remember, I got to send them that agreement. Oh, and I got to ask them about this. And I got to do, okay, so now I've gotten on the boat, come back to the shore, let it go. You're going to get on the boat a lot. It just happens. But every time you notice you're on the boat, come back, let it go. So you notice it and let it go. Notice it and let it go. And this is what meditation is. It's training in awareness. Like right now, if somebody right now is listening, here's a meditative thing. Notice the weight of your body in the chair that you're sitting in or the car. Notice the sound of the road or maybe outside. Maybe there's an air conditioner that kicked on. Notice if you feel any breeze on your skin. Like I start with the physical senses. Just notice it. No meaning making, no nothing to do. Just notice it.
Do you believe in hypnosis?
I've never done it. It seems to work for some people. I know people that have quit smoking and whatever, they swear by it. And yes, I guess, I don't have a lot of experience with it.
It's funny because I've gone to the fair and I see people being hypnotized, and I'm like, I even went to a show in Vegas and somebody got hypnotized, and it was just a crazy experience. But then they talk about how they can have you eliminate or quit certain things, or eliminate certain habits, or eliminate headaches, or eliminate this. So I just wonder if that's something that
I think that is doable. It is about accessing a certain part of the brain and changing how somebody relates to something. Even in something like traumatic experiences or something. I have a client actually right now who had a childhood that is rather unspeakable. It's just really shocking. Just the whole thing is quite remarkable that she is where she is. And one of the things that she was doing that I noticed was that she was re-traumatizing herself by like really going into the memories and the brain doesn't really understand what's happening right now in the here and now. It only understands what we're telling it. So if we're remembering with great detail a traumatic experience from the past, we're essentially re-traumatizing ourselves and re-traumatizing our body. And there's a way to process this where you can be with whatever your experience is. If it's anger or sadness or whatever, you can be with that experience without re-traumatizing yourself. So, but yeah, there's any number of ways to move through this and move energy through the body. And, but I do think hypnosis does work for a lot of people. Some people are more susceptible to it than others.
In that situation where somebody's re-traumatizing themselves, how does somebody relive the experience without re-traumatizing themselves?
Whatever happened in your past is not hurting you now. What's affecting you or hurting you or whatever, what's affecting you now is how you're remembering it, how you're holding it in your consciousness. So if you can change how you're holding it in your consciousness, then you can change the effect that it's having on your neurobiology and on your physiology. So like even in an extreme case, my father, I'd say about my dad, my oldest sister died when she was 11 years old, and dad threw himself into the bottle and into work. And, he didn't have a lot of coping skills, and he dealt with it best he could. He was really abusive. He was quite the tyrant. And I grew up in a state of like a constant state of threat response. And so this had a profound effect on me growing up, right? I was very young at the time. So I can look back at that and remember how that felt back then, but that doesn't really serve me now. What serves me now is to notice where I feel that in my body, to bring myself to the present moment and notice that I'm safe. And this is the hard part. You're going to hate this part. The ego hates this part. I got to let dad off the hook. Because while I can say, he was this, I could say he was a terrible person or a bad dad or whatever those judgments are. I don't go down that road. That's not how I look at it anymore. Because if I hold it that way in my consciousness, that he was this and did that to me, it's very victim consciousness. If I realize the deeper truth, if I let go of my sense of my understanding of right and wrong for a second, and I can see the deeper thing, it's not about me. This man had a very difficult time processing, like it was out of range for him. He could not process that level of pain or upset or whatever. And so I guess the analogy that I would draw is I'm not standing there in the storm and the rain. I'm not being rained on by the rain. I'm just standing in its path, right? I wasn't the target of my father's stuff. I was just in his path. It had nothing to do with me. Now, my job obviously is to go in and take care of that inner wounded kid in there, right? But that's my responsibility, not anybody else's.
Got it. So basically not being a victim, basically.
In my experience, victim consciousness produces nothing positive and doesn't serve and never feels good. And it's very rare that I work in absolutes, but this is one of them.
It's funny because I have a friend that he coaches people, and they come to him with problems. And one of the key questions that he asks him is, how did you contribute to this?
What's your role in it?
Yeah, what's your role in this?
We have a role. How did you contribute to it? Look, my first wife, that marriage ended, because she cheated on me. And it was like, I could have done, the whole, how could you do this to me kind of thing. But I recognize, I had a role in this here. I had a huge role in this. So it's easy to offload responsibility. It's what I call the junk food, though. The ego loves to offload responsibility. And it may feel really good in the moment, but it doesn't. It's like the junk food. It doesn't feel good long term. It tastes good in the moment, but it doesn't feel good a half hour later. The health food, not as great in the moment, but the health food is personal responsibility. That feels good long term.
Yeah. What do you coach people with? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that people come to you for?
That's a big one. I mean, really putting themselves in a position of empowerment. How do we accept full responsibility for everything in our lives? And responsibility, to be clear, is not fault, it's ownership, right? Think of it as a hyphenated word, response hyphen ability, your ability to respond. It's very easy to say, oh, the market sucks and that's why I'm failing. It's like, well, but that at the end of the day is not going to make you successful, right? How do you take responsibility for your success? How do you take responsibility for everything in your world?
How do you get, so I read this book called Extreme Ownership, and basically what
Great
that
book.
book talks
Yeah,
about.
Jocko. That's
Yeah,
Jocko's book, right? Yeah,
Jocko,
yeah.
yeah. It's excellent book, and it talks about just basically like taking responsibility for everything around you. And if you take
Yeah.
responsibility for everything around you, obviously, like you're more in control and it helps you. And I believe that even when something's not working out on my team, it's not their fault, it's my fault. But how do you get somebody to to like if I tell you, hey, look, this is the way that things are, or this is the way that it is, it's almost like they have to figure things out for themselves. So how do you get people to self-realize that them taking responsibility for themselves is actually the way for them to get out of that slump, or the way to grow, or the way to
Mhm.
basically take their life to the next level?
So earlier I mentioned, basic neuroscience, that feelings drive actions and actions produce results. The offloading of responsibility is an action. So that's going to be driven by a feeling. So what's the feeling that is going to create that dynamic where I'm offloading responsibility? Generally, fear or shame, right? Those are the two big ones. So if I can address the fear and the shame of something, then I can get somebody to accept responsibility for it. And again, responsibility is not fault, right? I've got to get out of this whole they did this to me, or it happened that way, it's the market, it's whatever. If I can put myself in that position of empowerment, um, even when I look at my childhood, right, I could say none of that was my fault. All of it is my responsibility. How am I going to respond to this today? Right? What am I going to do with this? Aligned or misaligned? Right? Again, very binary. Offloading responsibility creates powerlessness. You have no power, zero, from a victim consciousness, from offloading responsibility, from assigning blame. When you accept ownership of something, then you can affect it. Just like a cell phone, right? If it's sitting at, you're sitting there at the phone dealer and you don't own that phone, you can't affect it. The second you accept responsibility, you own that phone, now you can affect it.
How long does it take, or not how long, like if somebody is in a slump, basically not getting the results that they want, how do you help them get out of a slump as fast as possible? Or is there such thing as fast as possible?
You'd be amazed how fast this can happen. I've seen I've seen a guy save his marriage in about 4 weeks, and I didn't even talk to her. Like, she left, moved out, had left him, moved out, filed for divorce. He got her doing a 180 on that in 4 weeks, and it was just changing how he related to it. So again, the first thing is you got to start believing it's possible. That's the first thing. The second you believe it's possible, now we start to open doors and things can start happening. I mentioned it was the Bannister principle. This is the 4-minute mile guy. After decades of people trying to run a mile in under 4 minutes, Roger Bannister did it in 1954. And after decades, his record lasted 46 days because all of a sudden it became possible.
Now everybody basically could do it at that point, basically.
Yeah, they're like, I don't know, a couple thousand people or something at this point. I mean, but the second you get into that contracted place, it's like, all right, what if you're wrong? What if we can do this? What if there is a way to succeed in a down economy? What if there is a way to get that promotion? What if there is a way to get that job, even though you don't have a 4-year degree? I will tell you right now, every job I've ever had required a 4-year degree that I don't possess. It took me 9 years to get a 2-year degree, and I still don't know what that is. Liberal arts, I have no idea what my associate's degree is, but I have it.
So number one would be believing. What would number 2, 3, and 4 be?
Well, number one, you got to believe it. Number two, you got to empower yourself to do something about it. Number three, you got to take action. Call it God, source, spirit, universe, consciousness, whatever name you want to give it. It meets you at the point of action, right? So you got to get in motion. I mean, success loves speed. I've said that so many times, right? Success, money, however you define it, it loves speed. Get moving.
To take action, basically.
Take action. Yeah, take action. Because even if you take the wrong action, at least it gives you an idea of maybe what the right action is.
So how do you keep the ego out of the way? So like, it's funny, like I am part of a company called EXP. It's basically allows you to partner up with different agents and bring them in and receive a portion of the revenue. But I've had agents that I'm like, hey, look, like, you're paying this much at this company. They're not offering you this, they're not offering you that. And I almost feel like it's ego not allowing them to see how there's other opportunities that could help them out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you help somebody when there's an ego in place, or is that something that they could only help themselves?
Well, we talk about ego like it's a bad thing, and it's really not. I mean, we need our ego. We need to understand kind of what it is and how it works. When we think of ego, I think most people think of this big inflated "I'm so great" thing, but the ego that says, no, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve it, that's the same size ego. It's just on the other side of the spectrum, right? I'm God's greatest gift to everything, or I'm a worthless piece of crap. It's the same thing. It's just, the other side of the coin. Generally, people are going to cling to the familiar. So this is why change is so difficult, right? Like 87% of people diagnosed with a lifestyle related illness will not be able to make a change. People would rather die than change, literally. So the question is, how do we get somebody to run towards something cool and away from something not so cool at the same time? Because that humans do really well in that. But generally, we got to understand that the familiar is comfortable, right? And people are generally, I won't say happier, but I'll say it's easier for them to live in a familiar, terrible world than to stretch out and live in in an unfamiliar, wonderful world. Like, we're kind of crazy that way. Just familiarity is everything. So we got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. The magic for this, like the way I process this, is I got to get somebody out of their comfort zone and keep them within their range. So think of range as like their tolerances based on their psychology, their physiology, whatever. Because if I take them out of range, that's too far out. They'll go into collapse. So I got to get them out of the comfort zone where it's uncomfortable enough, but still within their tolerances. And that's going to be different human to human, team to team.
When you speak at different events or different companies, or you talk to like a group of agents, what do those talks typically look like?
How to bend reality, make anything you want happen. I mean, I started this company, I was broke and living out of my car. I didn't build this company out of a garage because I didn't have a garage or a house. I had a car. And it was either that or I had an opportunity to become a commercial real estate broker, actually. And but I turned that job down because I was like, well, okay, I might starve to death here, but I got to know. Like, I got to know if I can do this. And so yeah, it's you'd be amazed if I can get people thinking differently, if I can disrupt the feedback loop and the patterns and start to change kind of how they relate and give them just a moment where they go, I wonder. That's where it all begins. And I tell you, I did the keynote for Christie's International Real Estate Expo and a year and a half ago, I guess. And I told them, I said, there's somebody in this audience right now that's probably going to send me an email, because I get this email quite a bit. It says, "You don't know me, but," and it's somebody in that crowd that says, "You don't know me, but I really heard what you said here, and this is what I was able to do since then." And quite often they're living in a completely different reality. They've changed jobs and they've moved and they've gotten married or whatever. And it's really quite spectacular and it really just takes that one moment where you go, I wonder if, and that's how it starts.
So it's almost like you're shaking somebody up and being like shaking them up, but mentally, basically, to give them like an alternative reality to what is possible, basically.
Yeah, it's creating a hiccup, a quick little hiccup in that automated cycle that's running around. Like you're going to have something like 70,000 thoughts today. You're going to make 33,000 decisions. And most of that you're going to be completely unconscious of. Well, if I can create a hiccup in that system that's running so quickly, and it's a nanosecond, right? But that's the moment where consciousness can slip in.
Now, what if somebody is like in a bad financial position? Like, so some agents out there are almost like living paycheck to paycheck. It's almost like the lowest consciousness where they're like in survival mode consistently. Yeah. And it's almost like they're addicted to it, where it's like they get an escrow as soon as their bank account is down to like almost like the last penny, like, would you say it's harder to focus on that creativity and focus on what is possible? Or would you say it's the same thing for that individual to focus on that as somebody who's got 7 figures or 6 figures in their bank account?
Well, I like the idea that if you want to talk to a starving person about God, you have to feed them first. So it's very Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Um, so somebody like that, though, that's going to catch my radar just through my lens. That sounds like a strategy to me.
Uh-huh.
So people talk about, this is my nature. It's my nature to procrastinate, or it's my nature to run it down to the wire and then get the deal that saves my life, kind of
Or I
thing.
perform
No,
best under
that's
pressure, you know?
yeah, I'm best under it. That's not your nature. That's your strategy. It's an unconscious strategy that is designed to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's designed to raise the stakes so it makes your job more interesting to you. Maybe it's designed to make you feel better about yourself to pull it out at the 11th hour. Maybe it's designed to, right? There's all unconscious psychology going on. But if I spend, I don't know, 8 minutes with somebody that's got that going on, I'll figure out exactly what that strategy is designed to do. And then I can pivot it.
What is your process for figuring out what people need help with?
It's kind of funny, actually. I'll sit down with somebody and I'll say, okay, talk. And then they say, what do you want me to talk about? I say, I don't care. Because the way the brain works, it's all patterns. And so all I need to do is give somebody truly safe space where there is no judgment. There's no shame. There's like none of that going on, right? Where they can tell me anything, and I mean anything. And people tell me everything. And usually within about, anywhere between 8 and 20 minutes, I know everything I need to know. I know exactly where they are on the map. I got a good idea of what their kind of neural net looks like and what their inner world looks like. And, three stories will do it, because humans are creatures of patterns, not just habits, but patterns. It's just the way the brain works. And so give me 3 stories, I'll know what your patterns are.
Got it. How will you know that?
Because what we say is, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
The brain is super lazy. Okay. It's like, it's like, 8% of your body weight, and it's something like 25% of your energy output or something. It's an energy hog. So what the brain does to conserve energy is there's a part of the brain that's responsible for pattern recognition, where it sees that this thing over here is kind of like that thing over there. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just close enough. If it's close enough, okay, well, the way that I relate to this thing, I'll just relate to that thing the same way. And it has this cascade effect across somebody's entire world. And so they give me a story about this and a story about that and a story about the other. I can see where the brain is going, oh, template, template, template. I see what the template is. And now I got an idea what their world looks like. And so if I tell clients, that they might hire me for business, they might hire us for personal stuff. It really doesn't matter. I say, I just need it to mean something to you. I don't care what we're working on. It just has to be important. Because if it's important enough, when I fix it here, it dominoes across the board. I fix it everywhere. You got communication problems at work, you got communication problems at home, guaranteed.
100%. So you said something like, if I could hear the 3 stories, I know where they're at on the map. And you said something about on the template. What are the different things on the map?
Where somebody is on the map, that's a term that I use, in call it their own journey, their own personal evolution. Like what I tell people about their behavior, about their thoughts, about their feeling state, about their framework, it's not who you are, it's where you are. Like, this is where you are on the map. And so if I understand where that is, like, okay, well, where do you want to go? And I tell clients, I'm not taking you on my program, my thing. This is not my journey. This is yours. You're asking me to kind of be your Sherpa on your journey. And whatever road that goes down, whether it's asphalt with speed bumps, or if it's gravel, or there might be a river, or climb a mountain, or a desert, or whatever, like, I've got all the tools for any road or any whatever terrain your journey has in store. We have tools for all of that. So, but it's not, that's why there's no process in my organization. There's no process. It's not first we do this and then we do this and then we do that. It doesn't work that way. It's organic to every client, to every team, to every engagement.
You know, it's funny. When I hear about patterns, whenever we're helping somebody buy a property, we ask them what they're looking for, obviously, but then we
Mhm,
also ask them like where they've lived before and what properties they've written offers on and what
mhm,
type of properties they own. So I'll give you an
mhm,
example. My dad owns like maybe like five triplex and duplex all in the city of Oxnard. And I give this example to agents. I'm like, if you wanted to sell my dad an investment property, you'd probably sell him a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex in Oxnard. You sell him anything outside of that, he's probably not going to be that interested because it's outside of what he's accustomed to doing. Same
mhm,
thing with me. I'm almost like imagining that in your world, you see the different, they tell you the story, you see different patterns. And by seeing those patterns, you almost already know how to solve it, basically.
mhm.
So, what are the most common patterns that you see?
Oh, I don't know. There's many common patterns. I mean, generally, people are going to seek safety. Like there's a lot of patterns oriented around safety and the familiar. Um, but if you really get good at it, if you really want to be a ninja, you start looking at, and I do think there's a natural aptitude by this about this, by the way. Like it's just one of my gifts. I see patterns. I just
Yeah.
see them across the board. And so if I wanted to engage somebody in some kind of sales process, right, and I'm trying to figure out what they want and what they're trying to buy, and I'm trying to make sure I have the right thing for them, I'm actually not going to talk about the thing I'm going to try to sell. I'm going to talk about their relationship history. Like I'm going to talk about, tell me about the people you dated. Tell me about your past. Oh, how'd you meet your husband? How'd you meet your wife? I'm going to go, and I'm going to say, oh, really? And how did that? I'm just going to explore all of that stuff because what they don't know is that I'm connecting this to the thing that I'm selling. Because because their values are going to be baked in there. How they relate to things is going to be baked in there. Like all the stuff is going to be baked in there. And now I know exactly how to sell you whatever I'm selling you.
By basically knowing different things about them. So basically, how
Yeah, like
they.
how do they process information? Like how do they relate to this? What we say in this work is how you relate to the issue is the issue.
So ask me some questions to see how I process things.
Mhm. You in a romantic partnership right now?
Yeah, married.
Okay, married. How long? This might
6
take a
years.
while, by the way. This might take about 10 minutes if we really get into it. But how many
I,
kids?
I'm just kind of curious to see how like this 2 kids.
All right, 2 kids. How'd you meet your wife?
We met at a festival.
At a festival.
Yeah,
Okay. So, music festival?
yeah.
Okay. Is that out of the country or was it local?
It was local. It was actually Latino, like Mexican independence in the city of Oxnard.
Oh, okay. And how long ago was that?
That was maybe like 12 years ago, somewhere around there.
Oh,
12,
okay.
13, 14, somewhere north of 10, less than 15.
Got it. Okay.
Hope my wife doesn't see
So,
this. I'm
right.
kidding.
So see, already I'm getting an idea of how sentimental you are, right? It's like, yeah, you're not really connected to the anniversary date or exactly when or whatever. Like, so it's like, okay, so he's not a super sentimental guy. All right. Just getting some loose framework around this, right? We can
Okay.
dig into your other history or something, but I'm gonna say, okay, so what's the pattern? Like, how'd you meet the woman that you dated previous to your wife? Are we gonna get in trouble? Like,
Nah. No,
okay.
I'm kind of curious. So this gives me an idea because now it's like, okay, you connected that to the sentimental portion of it. You're like, and that's true. I'm not like very like sentimental or like super emotional or anything like that.
Right.
But you were able to connect that just based on that. So
Mhm.
you connected that to the sentimental. What other thing? What are some of the other metrics that you're looking at? Like sentimental,
Well, for something like that, it
like
means you're going to be more practical. So it means you're probably going to be a strategic kind of guy. Um, if I continue to explore further, I'll understand a little bit more about how you process information. Let me.
well, let's keep going.
Okay. So if I were to take a bunch of Legos
Mm-hmm.
and arrange them in a pattern in front of you on your desk,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to know about that arrangement?
Take a bunch of Legos and
Okay, take
arrange
a
them.
bunch, and I arrange them very specifically. It doesn't matter what the arrangement is, but it's a very specific and intentional arrangement. What do you want to know about the arrangement? Like, what do you want to know?
if it's flat on the ground or if it's up,
Yeah, but on
like
your table,
standing up.
yeah, it doesn't make
Oh, it
anything, right?
doesn't.
They're
It doesn't
not.
make
We
it.
didn't build a spaceship or anything. These are just Lego blocks on the table.
I would want to know how big they are.
Well, you
What are
can
the
see
different?
that, right?
Okay, I can
Imagine
see
you
that.
can
Okay.
see how big they are, right? I mean, this. Imagine it's there, right in front of you. What do you want to know?
I mean, if I could, I don't know how many of them I have, or I could see them, so that
You
wouldn't
can see
matter.
that, right?
Yeah,
So I don't know if you got 100 of them. Okay, so now what do you want to know? What do you want to know about the arrangement?
I'm not sure. Like when you say arrangement, like
Okay. Well, generally, people are going to want to know one of four things. They're going to want to know why. Why did I arrange them that way?
oh, like
Okay.
let's say there's something already there, basically.
No,
Is
it's they're
basically
just. I mean, they might be a pile, but I took these things and put them in a specific arrangement.
okay.
Right
Okay.
now, if you want to know why I did it that way, why are they arranged that way? Which I suspect I'm kind of getting
Yeah.
the sense that you're probably a why guy. You're a critical
Yeah.
thinker.
Yeah.
Okay,
Why?
so
Yeah.
critical thinkers want to know the why. Right
Yeah. What?
now, if you were really focused on, well, what does it like? What does it look like? What's the shape it makes? What like you're not. If there's more about how that looks, you're probably a creative thinker, right? What does this look like? How does it, if you want to know what happens next, like, okay, you've arranged it, now what? Okay, you're probably a strategic thinker. You want to know how this relates to the future. Now, if you want to know the meaning of the arrangement, like, is it a symbol or whatever? Like, what's the meaning of this arrangement? Well, then you get somebody like me. I'm a conceptual thinker. I'm not particularly interested in the details. I'm interested in the concepts that are at work behind it. So you'll
Mhm.
probably have a primary and a secondary, but you're, the why is the critical thinker. You've got the creative thinker. You've got the strategic thinker, and you've got the conceptual thinker. And so I start to get an idea of how you process information. So you're probably more of a critical guy with a strategic, secondary
Mhm.
strategic.
I'd probably say so. So how is this? How does this help me? Like, let's say that you're trying to get me to uh,
Mhm.
produce more or not produce more.
Because now I know how your system works. So what I'm doing is calibrating, right? I refer to human beings as human systems, right? Like mind, body, spirit. Everything is a system. Even reality itself, as I mentioned earlier, is the end result of a system. And any system can be hacked if you understand that system well enough. So if I understand your system and I understand where that system, the end result it needs to produce, well, now I just start recoding. So how do I get this system to produce that outcome based on everything I know about that system?
I love it. Who are most of your clients? Are most of your clients like athletes? Are they business people? Are they individuals? Are they CEOs, COOs? Are
It's kind
they?
of all over the board, and it depends on the coach. I have several coaches on my team, and so we kind of play in different sandboxes. Generally, they're going to be professionals in some way, shape, or form. They're business owners. They're they're in the C-suite, or even, I mean, I've worked with middle managers and like the big four accounting firms and things like that. So my clients historically have been, you're gonna love this because it's kind of funny, but I don't do a lot of one-on-one work anymore. But historically, they were professional women that were overwhelmed, burned out, and kind of irritated with their husbands. Like that was my client. So Lauren, who works with us, her clients tend to be men who are business owners. Avi, who works with us, he tends to work with, again, a business owner, but they sort of have it all, but really hate their lives. They're kind of miserable. And, they've checked all the boxes. They went to school and bought the house and married the woman and go on the vacations and bought the cars and has the job, like all the things, but just like, this is not what life is supposed to be, kind of thing. And so it is kind of a mixed bag, but all of it is oriented around the seemingly impossible. Like, Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Well, I built this organization so that people find out why, and we make sure that they make that happen.
I love
Because
it.
that's what it was for me. I mean, that's, and I have a history of making impossible things happen. And I learned that there's a science to it. And so now I apply that science to the clients.
If somebody wanted to get better at this science, because obviously I think that this is like extremely valuable to have people, how would they get better at it?
Well, it's I mean, Dr. Andrew Huberman has a great podcast. It's all steeped in neuroscience and neurobiology. I mean, you can listen to our podcast. I mean, that's there's a lot of tools and things where we actually do coaching sessions on our podcast. So if somebody gets on and we're like, look, we're going to process through this right here, right now. I think so far my record for a sustainable transformation in somebody's life is about 8 minutes. So why spend 3 years doing something when we can do it in 8 minutes, right? So I would say look in the places that interest you. Look at peak performance. There's a lot of organizations. I did some of my training with Stephen Kotler's organization, the Flow Research Collective. Did some stuff with the Flow Genome Project. I mean, I've trained with retired Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces. These are all people that are designed to make impossible things happen. So you can, Jocko Willick's book is a great example. You'll find inspiration all over the place.
Got it.
But yeah, it's all, like I said, it's getting your psychology, your physiology, and your energy all working for you instead of against you.
I love it, man. So if somebody enjoyed this interview and wanted to get in contact with you, maybe they're a realtor, maybe they're an attorney, maybe they are in that position where they have it all, how would somebody get in contact with you or your company?
Yeah, you can go to our website. It's statusflow.net. That's the place to go. We've got everything on there. It's actually going to be changing soon, so I'm kind of excited about the new launch. So
I love it. Good. So I want to say thank you, Chris, for taking the time to be on the show. I've enjoyed this interview. Just to be fully transparent to our viewers, this is something that's a little bit different, or different types of interviews that I normally do, but it's something that I do have interest in and I'm curious about it. So it helps. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this episode would be helpful to somebody, make sure to hit that share button. To our viewers, once again, we had Chris King. We talked about how to become a top real estate agent, and it has a lot more to do with psychology than actual mechanics. 80% is psychology, 20% is mechanics. So make it a great day, guys. Thank you again, Chris. Appreciate you and wish you the best.